Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to the first video that will get you started to programming in Python. Now, before we get started, let me put a disclaimer out. Uh, Although this course is for a person who's never programmed before, never ever written a single line of code, and never done any kind of programming course, don't know what programming is, this course is for you. This is the perfect course for you. We'll do everything from the very beginning. But before you start, you need a few things in your computer to get us started. And I am not recording a video to install things like Python, Jupyter Notebook, stuff like that, because I feel there is enough content out in the universe. You can just type it on Google, YouTube, and you'll get a lot of videos that help in doing that. What I'll do here is just tell you what are the prerequisites that, or basically things that should be present in your laptop to be able to program. If you're programming, I'm assuming that you have a Linux based machine. So this course, unfortunately, is only for people that have a Linux based machine. So if you have a Mac, that works. Uh, on your screen, you can see a terminal open. So if you have a Mac, open up a terminal. And if you have a Linux based machine like in Ubuntu, Linux, Red Hat, whatever, that works. That's perfect. And before we get started, you need a few things in a computer. I basically just two things. You need to download Python 3. So download Python 3, go on YouTube, check out how it's done. It's very easy to do it. And another thing that you should download is Jupyter Notebook, and it's spelled with a Y. So download Jupyter Notebooks. These are two things that we'll be using uh, very frequently. And first, we'll be writing Python scripts just a few times, and after that, I'll probably move on to just skipping writing Python scripts and only work with Jupyter notebooks because they are so easy to use, so intuitive, and very effective. So take your time, install Python 3, install Jupyter Notebook in your machine, and then that's all you need. That's all you need to get started with programming in Python. Yeah, so now when we begin programming in Python, or when we begin programming in general, there is this sacred first program that everyone writes, and it's called the Hello World program. And what we do in this program is we try to print Hello World on your screen. So assuming you have Python in your machine, and we're going to begin by writing a script for Python. And to do that, I'm going to be using a Vim editor right now because the Vim editor, I don't want to use any new editor because I mean then that's another overhead. You have to install another editor. So just using Vim editor, which is present in all terminals. I'm going to be using terminal very frequently. So uh, let's write our first program, and I call it firstprogram.py. All Python programs have an extension .py, and we're going to be using Python 3, and our aim is to say hello to the programming world. That's what we want to do, and it's really simple in here. In Python, everything is so simple, and the way to display hello world or to say hello to the programming world. Oh shit, what did I do? Uh, Sorry, this is probably some other thing that was copied on my clipboard. Well, just a couple of comments using Vim. When you type Vim firstprogram.py, it opens a Vim file where you can write your program. To be able to write, you have to first press I. So this is not, when it's open, it's not in the write mode. When you press I, now you can write. And when I pressed I, this insert appeared. This means that now I can write in the file. So I wanted to say hello to the programming world. And we say this using the print command. And within the parentheses, I say hello world. And you know what? This is it. This is it. This is all you need to write. This is just one line, basic hello world program. And now all we need to do is just run it. And you run the program by the command Python 3, write Python 3, and then the name of your program and press enter. And here it says, hello world. This is it, guys. You've written your first ever Python program. You're in it now. You're a programmer now. And we'll just do the same thing again using Python Jupyter Notebooks. So to open Jupyter Notebooks, I use the command IPython notebook. Uh, this opens the Jupyter Notebook for me, and then this I'm in the same directory as I was in before. It already contains the first program, but it has a .py .python extension. The Jupyter Notebook has a Python notebook extension, which I think is IPYNB. So to write or to create or to work in a Jupyter Notebook, you need to create a Jupyter Notebook file, Python file, and you do it by clicking new and create another notebook called, well, it's untitled right now. We say first program. I give it the same name. Uh, and now I'll do the same thing. I want to say hello to the programming world. And this is done exactly the same way. Use print, say hello to the programming world. And to execute this, you don't have to close the file. You don't have to run it, compile it. Don't have to do any of that stuff. All you have to do is when you finish, press Shift and Enter. Shift Enter at the same time, and it prints "Hello World." That is how simple it is. That's how great using Jupyter notebooks are, because you don't have to, close the file, and it you run block by block. So I wrote print "Hello World" here in one block, and in the next block I say goodbye. So when I say goodbye, I'll run this block again. So now the advantage here is that, one, you don't have to close and open things again, compile them. And another advantage of using Jupyter Notebooks is that it runs block by block. So if I have an error in this block, I mean, right now it's perfect, but if I have an error in this block, but when I run this block, it will tell me that I have an error. Like, for example, if I create an error, it says there is an error here. Dude, you have an error, correct it, and I will get to know the error. You don't have to close the file again, run it to check if there's an error. You can do it on the go. And that's why I love Jupyter Notebooks, and you should, get really comfortable in it. And that's where a lot of the advanced work in Python is done. I mean, most courses in machine learning, deep learning are taught using Jupyter Notebooks. So it's so easy. And actual research sometimes happens. Not sometimes. I mean, I do actual research in machine learning and deep learning, and I use Jupyter Notebooks all the time. I love Jupyter Notebooks. I write codes, implement algorithms, use TensorFlow, PyTorch, all kinds of libraries. I use Jupyter Notebooks. So Jupyter Notebooks is the shit, man. It is the shit. Use Jupyter Notebooks and you'll have a very easy life. Python makes life easier anyways, but Jupyter Notebooks takes it to the next level. So this was it. This was the this was us writing our first ever program. Just to finish up, I'll quickly show you that this file that we created in Jupyter Notebooks has the extension IPYNB. This is a Python Jupyter Notebook, and the program that we wrote had an extension firstprogram.py. So this was it in the first video. You've entered the programming world. You're a programmer now. Come back in the next video and we'll actually get going. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy learning, guys. Hey guys, welcome to this new video on learning Python. And in this video, what we do is we write our actual first program. So we wrote the hello world program, but that was kind of a ritual, a sacred ritual, but we all know it wasn't really a program. We're just printing stuff out. And in this video, we'll write our first actual program that actually does something. You know what I mean? It actually does a function. It does something. And what we'll be doing in this video is we'll be writing a program that adds two numbers. Sounds stupid, but I mean, we'll introduce a few concepts here and there. So let's write a program that adds two numbers.py. I'm using the script again initially, and then I'll move on to the Jupyter Notebook. Again, to create a Python file, I use the Vim editor, vim add two numbers .py, and to write in the Vim editor, I have to press I. When I press I, this insert mode kicks in, and now I can write in this file. So I want to add two numbers. Okay, but the thing is, I just don't want to do something like 3 plus 5, because what happens if I want to use the result in the future? I mean, the future means if I have, like, say, a 20-line code and I want to add two numbers in the first 5 lines and use the result later on, I probably should use something called a variable, which is a, a place basically to store data. So a variable uh, is, say, a box which stores data for us. And there are different kinds of variables that we'll be covering in this video, but this is the most basic way to add numbers. So this is not like a lower level programming language where you, like C, where you have to declare variables, then you have to initialize them, stuff like that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to declare any variables. The numbers that you use kind of Python declares variables on its own depending on what you entered, and that's it. Python is really easy, guys. Python is the best first language because you don't have to get into too much detail, and you still have a lot of you can do a lot of powerful things with Python. So we're adding two numbers. So what we do is I assign the value 3 to the variable A, then I assign the value 5 to the variable B, and then I create a variable called sum, which is A plus B. And then what I'll do is I'll print the variable. Now, earlier in the last video, we printed something that was written. So if I have to print something that's that's actually written as it is, uh, I use double quotes. So if I use double quotes and uh, say hello world, this will actually print hello world in the terminal. But if I want to print a variable, I just write sum and it prints the variable. So let's see what this code does. It's a very simple code, and to run it again, say Python 3 add two numbers, I press the sum. Sum is equal to 8. That's how simple it was. I mean, it's still a longer code in C. If you this was a 3 to 4 line code in Python. If you were, say, writing the code in C, you would have had to use about 8 to 9 lines. And these lines, I mean, it's a really simple and great language, Python. So let's explore variables a bit. Let's explore variables a bit, and let's use Jupyter Notebook to do it, because Jupyter Notebook is a great place to explore. And I opened the Jupyter Notebook by writing IPython notebook on the terminal. It opens up a Jupyter Notebook for me in the current directory. It already has a file. Now I open a new file, and I call the file variables. So let's learn about variables. Variables are boxes, let's say boxes, or are objects that store data for us. And the data it stores can be in the form of integers, real numbers, so basically numerical data. It can also store characters, names of people, names of places, stuff like that. So there are different data types variables come in different types. So the variable types that we'll be studying right now. Okay, so another thing that you can do in Python is you can comment, and the way you comment is you put this hash symbol, and everything you write after this hash symbol means that it is a comment. And what is the meaning of a comment is that when the computer is running your program, it ignores everything that's written after the hash symbol. So it ignores all comments. It does not run comments. So if I write something like this is a comment and I run this, it does nothing because I this block contained only one line, which was a comment, and the computer ignored it, so it actually did nothing. But if I remove this, it shows an error because this is not a Python command. So it's like, what are you doing, man? What's this? What's going on? What? I don't understand this because this is not anything that this means nothing in the Python language, and it shows an error. So uh, what we'll be learning in this video are variables, and we'll be learning three data types. The data types we're learning are integers, floating point numbers, or you could say real numbers, and we're learning about strings or characters, but strings in general, which you could say are words. Okay, so this is what we're learning in this video, and let's do one thing. Let's again do what we did earlier, but explore and find out how Python works behind the scenes. Let's our aim here is again, or the problem statement is again, add two numbers. So let's do this. Let's add two numbers. How do you do that? You assign your A is your variable. You assign the value you want to add to that variable. I assign A equal to 3, so A is 3. But now let's see what kind of a data type A is. So A is a variable. A is a variable because it stores data, 3. Now let's see what kind of a data type A is. So if A stores 3, if I write type A, it tells me what kind of a data type it is. Remember again, to run a block, you use Shift Enter. It says it's an integer. The type of the variable that A is an integer. And why is that? Because we entered an integer. Let's enter something else. Let's say I entered 3.42. Now this is a real number. So now when I run it again, the type of A now becomes float because it's a real number. Let's say I entered 3.0. 3.0, it again is a real number because now it has a decimal place. It has to store decimals. Whenever you have to store decimals, the number is stored as real number. Whenever you don't have to store decimals, it's stored as integer. So say my first number is A and my second number is B, which is 5, and the result or the sum is A plus B. And now I want to print the sum. So we've done this. This is not interesting. What's interesting is, let's see what kind of data type sum is. It's int because it's adding two integers. But now, say if I have the value of b becomes 5.6. Now b is not an integer anymore, as we saw earlier. Now it is a float. So can Python add two different data types? Can it add an integer with a float? Is such a thing possible in Python? Because if you've used some lower level languages like C, it's not possible. You cannot add an integer with a float. It does stuff. But here you can actually do it, and it'll actually give you the right answer. So let's print sum as well. So I'm also printing sum here. So A is 3, I run A, B is this. So it gives me the correct answers. This means you can actually add an integer and a float. And the type of sum, the data type, the variable sum is now of the type float. So the data type depends upon the result, which is obviously 8.6. So 8.6 is what is stored in sum. And because 8.6 is a real number, now the data type of sum the variable sum becomes a float. So you can actually add different data types together. So this was pretty simple concepts, not that interesting, but it's a simple code. We've already done it before, but let's explore data types or variables a bit more. Let's introduce a new kind of data type and basically strings. So let's introduce strings. So let's say I enter my name. My name is Akshat. So I entered my name. My name is Akshat. It's a word. It's stored in a variable called name. So name is a variable. It's a box that stores data. What is that data? That's my name. So it stores the data, which is my name. And now let's see what the data type of this variable is. Name, which is a string. It's a string. It's a word. So let's write a cheeky piece of code. This says first name is the variable, and last name is my last name is another variable which has my last name, which is Gupta, and the full name is first name plus some space plus last name. Can I do such a thing? Can I add two strings together? Can I add, okay, let's leave this for a minute. Can I add two strings together? Is such a thing possible in Python? Yes, it's possible, and it's just as simple as adding 1 plus 2. In other languages, it's a bit more complicated. Adding two strings together, it's a bit more complicated if you don't use some inbuilt functions. But in Python, it's just this straightforward. So let's see. Uh, what I want to do here is now print my full name, which is a variable. And when I do this, it prints my full name, Akshat Gupta. And what's the type of the variable full name? It's straight as a string. Now, if I want a space between my first name and last name, I can do this thing where I add between the first name and the last name another string, but the string has nothing but a space. So it's a string again. So let's do it here. Uh, it's a space. So if you assign this to A and then you say what's the type of A, it's a string. So this space is a string variable which has nothing in it. It's basically empty space. And if I add these three things together, if I print again, now my name appears with a space. And the type of the full name is still a string. So this was a very simple and a very basic introduction to Python variables. And we know how to add stuff. We can also, divide and do stuff, other things, other interesting things with uh, Python variables. But this is it for this video. Very brief introduction and a bit of exploration to use variables. We'll be back in the next video to discuss other variables and how you play with them. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned, and I hope I'll see you again in the next video. Bye. Hey guys, what is up? And this in this video we'll be learning a bit more advanced concept. We'll be learning conditional statements. We'll be learning the if else statements. How can you put in logic inside a computer program? That's what we'll be learning today, and we'll be learning another very important concept in programming in general, which becomes even more important in Python, and that is indentation. Why you indent your code? Usually you indent your code so that it becomes more readable. Why you indent your code in Python? Because it's really important. Otherwise, the computer does not understand what you're writing. Indenting your code is really important in Python. So I'm going to switch things up a little bit here. I'm not going to be using the script first, or I might just not use the script in the video at all. I want you guys to get used to writing programs in the Jupyter Notebook, and that's why I'll start by with the Jupyter Notebook. So we create a new file, and this new file, let's call this, or we name the file divide to numbers, because that's what our problem statement is. In this video, what we'll be doing is we'll be writing a program that divides two numbers. That's what we're going to do. And the problem statement here, divide two numbers. So the first step in uh, this is that we define and initialize our variables. So our variables are the numerator, which in this case would be 3, and the denominator, which in this case would be 5, or in my case at least, no, let's switch it. Let's call it 6 and 3, and and in another cell I write the result, which is numerator divided by the denominator, and I print the result and also the type of the result. So what's the data type of the variable result? So let's see what we get. The answer should of course be 2, and so this is how I can write multiple things. I can print multiple things out. I say that the result is equal to, then I put the name of the variable which is printed, and then I say data type is equal to, and then I print this result. Remember, we're using Python 3, so this is not Python 2, 2.7, stuff like that. This is Python 3. This is how it's done in Python 3. Let's see what we get. We get that the result is 2.0 and not 2. So whenever you kind of divide things in Python, the resultant is always an integer. And hence the data type of the variable result now is float. So it's an object which has type float. So let's play with the program a little bit now. So we all know that a computer cannot divide by 0. So we must put in this condition that if some crazy dude asks me to divide 4 by the number 0, I should not even try and do it and just give an error. And not like an error, but an error message that there's something wrong with you, man. You're trying to divide a number by 0. You know that's something you should not do. Don't you know that's something you should not do? And to do that, you have to put in a logic inside a computer program. And this is done using the if condition. So the syntax for the if condition is very simple. What you say is if the denominator is equal to 0, then you put a colon. Then you put a colon after that. If the denominator is equal to 0, then the result is, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. If the denominator is not equal to 0, so the exclamation equal to means not equal to. So it checks if the denominator is not equal to 0, and if the denominator is not equal to 0, then the result is, of course, numerator divided by the denominator. And then you can also print the result, write some text, result is equal to, and then print the variable result. But if the denominator is 0, so these statements are called if-else statements. So if the denominator is not equal to 0, do the division, else don't do the division. So we don't do the division, we just write an error message. Dude, there's something wrong with you. You don't divide by 0. Yeah, so let's say that. You don't divide by 0, man, what's wrong with you? Yeah. And that is my program. So if I run this now, I get the result too. But if I put a zero in here and I run this, he doesn't he says, dude, there's something wrong with you. You don't divide by zero. So let's see what happens here. Let's see what's happening here. There are a few things that we should talk about. One is the if-else statement syntax. I mean, we all get it. What you have to do is you're putting in logic in the computer program. You do it using the if-else statement. You say if a certain condition, which is like if the denominator is not equal to zero, if this condition is true, if so if the condition that's given is true, which means the denominator is not equal to zero, then do the things that are specified after the if condition. And then if they're not true, then do not do any of these things that are specified after the if condition. Okay, so then what should I do if uh, the if condition is not met? If there is an else condition, then do what's specified after the else condition. So if the denominator was equal to zero, which was in this case, it did not do either of these things. The computer goes crazy if you divide something by zero, and it just did this thing. It was giving you an error message that you don't divide by zero. So this was a very simple program which introduced us to if else condition or conditionals in Python. And this is it for this video. And in the coming videos, we'll learn more advanced concepts, get together a few of the things that we learned, build better, tougher programs, bigger programs, and learn more Python. So until then, have a nice day, guys. I hope you enjoy learning, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, welcome to this new video in this Python video series. And in this video, we're gonna switch things up again. I am just blatantly going to start by using Jupyter notebooks. Now, I am actually ignoring writing scripts in Python, and I don't do that. I don't do that anymore. I used to do it like in the first 6 months. I wrote Python scripts, .py files. I used to compile it. I used to get errors. I used to go back, correct them the usual way because I learned programming that way. But I personally feel after using Jupyter notebooks for such a long time, now I feel it's useless, and I'm blatantly going to not do that and just begin by using Jupyter notebooks. And in this video, our plan is to learn how to take user input. So that's the big plan, that's the big goal, that's the one major new thing that we learn. And along and also revise what we did in the previous videos, which is to revise conditional statements, the if else statement. I will so here's the thing. We'll write the exact same program, divide two numbers in a different way. What we'll do is we'll take user input. We'll ask the user to provide us with numbers that they want to get divided, and then we'll divide them. So this is what we'll do. And again, I'll highlight the importance of indentation and how a program is executed and why certain things are better and certain things are not better in terms of optimized way of writing a code. So it's also a bit of hint to programming and to conditional statements. And the one big thing we learn is user input. Now I want to again put something out that here I'm not going into a lot of depths into a lot of things, because what I want to teach here, or what I want you guys to learn from these videos, is to uh, learn Python by doing things. So now I can talk for an hour about variables. There are a bunch of variables. We just covered three: integers, floats, and strings. You have lists, tuples, arrays, dictionaries, and everything. Each one of them has their own, own set of problems. It's like a huge. It'll take you an hour to learn, to listen to each of them, to learn about them, and then in the end, all of us end up forgetting all of them anyways, and we look it up online, Google it. So my plan here is to spend time on certain problems and learn by actually writing codes that we actually get to use in daily lives. So that's how I want I like to learn, and that's how I'd like you guys to learn. So this is why I'm not going to real depths of things. I'll always keep coming back to things, like I'm coming back to conditionals, if else statements. I'll always keep coming back to things, add uh, new knowledge, cover things that I did not cover before, but I'm only going to cover things that are absolutely necessary at this point of time. So right now we're trying to divide two numbers, and we're going to do it by taking user input. And taking user input could not be any easier. So how we take user input is we use the command input. That is it. We use the command input, and the text, we write a text inside input, and the text is something that's displayed on the screen before uh, the computer asks the user to take input. So let's see how it goes. This is enter a number. I'm going to write the code, and then you uh, will understand better. Uh, so what this code does is it takes the user input, stores it in the number A, then prints the number A, and what I'm also going to do is print another thing, which is the data type of the number A, which is okay. So let's run this and see what we get. So now the computer asks, the program is asking me to enter a number. I enter 8, and it says the number is 8, so it took the input correctly. And it says with the data type class string. What is that supposed to mean? I did not enter a word, I entered a number. Okay, let's try and do this again. This time I enter a real number, let's say 8.97. So it took the correct number as input, 8.97, but the data type is always string. Huh, what is that? What's wrong? So this is kind of a rule that's always followed in taking user input, is that the input is always stored as string. So what we do here is another thing which I should have written here, is something that we learn here, is the concept of typecasting. So what we do is we want to do arithmetic. We want to add two numbers, or right now we want to divide two numbers, but let's say I want to add two numbers. So if I use this, I'm going to end up with a problem. And the problem is going to be that I don't want to add two strings. I want to add numbers. If I add two strings, so if I say if I want to do addition first, okay, I am doing addition. So let's take a detour for a minute, and let's try and solve the problem of uh, adding two numbers by taking user input. Now I'm doing this because I want to show you a specific kind of thing that occurs. Uh, so I take user input, and say the user, okay, dude, you gotta enter another number, and then I sum this up, a plus b, and then I print the sum. So I want you guys to think for a minute and guess or conclude what happens when I run this program. So what happens, the first thing happens is I enter a number, which is 4. Then I enter another number, which is 3. Now what when I enter, it'll execute this thing, which is it sums up A and B, and then it prints the sum. And let's see what it prints. It prints 43. It did not print 7, it printed 43. Why is that? And that is because uh, A is a string now. A is a string, which is 4. B is a string, which is 3. And when you add strings using the plus sign, it basically means concatenating two strings, joining them together. So it did not interpret 4 as an integer, but interpret it as a string. And when you have a plus sign between strings, the operation it does is to concatenate those two strings and joins them together, and so we get 43 instead of a 7. So that's what involves taking user input. So what we have to do, there's a solution to this, and the solution is typecasting. Typecasting basically typecasting means converting the data type in a very raw language, converting the data type of a variable. And there's a very simple way to do it is as follows. If I say that uh, a number, a variable number is equal to 3, and I ask the computer to print the data type of number, it is going to be a string because I entered a string and 3 as a string. But if I enclose the number, the string, in integer parentheses, this is what typecasting means. Now it's an integer. So it basically converts whatever is inside this into an integer. I could do float here, and it converts it into a float. So the easiest thing to do here, to correct the addition of two numbers program, is to write an int here. So let's try and run this and see what we get. I want to enter a number 5, then I enter 3, and my sum is 8, which is what I wanted. Now this program has one problem, and let's see if that problem occurs. I have a number 5.3, and then I get an error because I have an int type conversion here, but the input is not an integer. It's a string which has a decimal, so it makes no sense for the computer. So what if you want to add integers, you have to write a float here. So that's the thing. And then you do something like this and you get the right result. So now with this knowledge about taking user input and typecasting, our aim now is to divide two numbers. And to do that, remember we need to use the conditional. So we take the user input, enter a number, let's say enter numerator. B is float, input, enter denominator, and then you add your conditional statements, which I'm going to write it in a bit different way than I did in the previous video. What I do here is I write an if condition followed by the statement which says that if b, which is the denominator, okay, let's do this. Numerator, denominator, just to keep things consistent. Now, instead of checking the denominator that's not 0, I check that if the denominator is 0, then print that don't divide by 0, else else do the following things. Else find out the result, which is numerator divided by denominator, and print the result, which is the result is result. So this is interesting. Let's test it out. Enter numerator 9, enter denominator 2, it's 4.5, it's correct. And enter numerator 2, enter denominator 0, and says don't divide by 0. So, okay, don't be 0, man. Okay, what did I write? Don't divide by 0. Well, don't be 0, man. So just a few comments before we finish up. Notice that in this if statement, I used double equal to's and not equal to's, and I've used equal to's before. So what is this double equal to? So what I'm trying to say in this statement is that if the denominator is equal to 0, then do something. What I'm trying to say here is whatever value the user gives me, put it in the box of a variable called numerator. So these two zeros are kind of they're essentially different. The first equal to with only one equal to is called the assignment operator, and the double equal to comes under the umbrella of relational operators. They try to relate things on the LHS and RHS of the operator. So this is a small introduction to the topic of operators and what operators are. We've looked at a few operators in Python, mathematical operators, addition, division, multiplication, subtraction. We know these. Then comes the assignment operator, the operator which is here. And what this does is it assigns the value on the RHS to the variable on the LHS. It assigns the value on the RHS to the variable on the LHS. This is what the assignment operator does. On the other hand, this is a relational operator. It relates two values on the LHS and the RHS. And this is what the relation operator does. The relational, the double equal to operator, it checks if LHS is equal to RHS. So it checks if the LHS, which is the denominator in this case, is equal to 0 or not. It returns true if the statement is true, and remember that the if condition goes through only if the statement after this is true. So what this does is it returns a value called true if LHS is equal to the RHS, and then the statement goes through. Remember that we used uh, in one of the previous videos, or in the last video actually, we used the not equal to operator. It's also a relational operator, and it checks if the LHS is not equal to the RHS. So it returns true if the LHS is not equal to the RHS, and if the statement after if is true, then the if condition goes forward. So this was a little and a small introduction to operators and the difference between the assignment operator, which is a very important operator. You really have, I mean, it's taught in almost all basic programming classes. It's a concept in programming and you should know it. The assignment operator and the relational operators. There are more relational operators, and you all know those operators: greater than, less than, greater than equal to, less than equal to. These all come under the same umbrella as these two guys: the not equal to and is equal to. So all these are questions that are asked in the statement, and the answer is either a true or a false, which is the return or the answer of the question, basically. Yeah. So this was it from this video. We learned how to take user input and a bunch of other things, typecasting, about operators, and writing if statements, if else statements, conditional statements, putting logic into your program. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed learning.